Congratulations. It's your dream. You finally got a contract with a major publisher. What are the next steps? What happens next? What do you do to market your book? What do they do to market your book? We're honored today to have Carl Landau as our guest. He is the co-author of Pickleball for Dummies, which was published recently by Wiley, which also published 6 of my books and translated them into 6 languages. So we all love Wiley. Welcome, Carl.
Oh, really nice to talk to you, Dan.
Thank you. So tell us, the big moment, you get the contract from a big publisher, you sign on the dotted line and you say to yourself, now what? What are your responsibilities? What are their responsibilities when it comes to marketing?
Right. So we were in a really good position as far as marketing the book, which, for most authors, that's sort of a secondary thought, is how they're going to market it. So I have a podcast and it's called I Used to Be Somebody, and it's specifically for baby boomers. And if anyone knows anything about pickleball, the baby boomers are like dominant. That's our sport. So I was in good position in the fact that I had already had this podcast for 2 years, which is not specifically about pickleball. Although we do talk, it's sort of a strange combination. We do talk a little bit. There's a segment called Pickleball Life Lessons with Mo, where we relate pickleball with life and stuff like that. So I was very fortunate in the fact that we had a team on this. So Mo Nard and Rianne Steele were our authors as far as they actually taught my wife and I, Diana, how to play pickleball. So they are the experts, and I had worked with Mo for 2 years on the podcast, and so they really were the experts on the technical parts of pickleball. And my wife's a writer and an editor, so she fulfilled that part, and I was more the marketing guy. Mm-hmm. So we had quite a little dream team because my background's in marketing and publishing and media. So we really had a running start, I'd say, on the book and ideas on how to market, and I can explain some of the stuff we've done.
Sure, I'd love to know what you did, but first, what did Wiley say they would do? Because everyone who writes a book who's sort of like a neophyte will think that the publisher does everything for them, and the author just sits back and collect royalty checks. We know that's not how it works, but what can we as authors realistically expect the publisher to do in terms of marketing and distributing the books?
Yeah, well, the great thing with a big publisher, and Wiley does a great job, is particularly on the distribution. So instantly, we're in every Barnes & Noble, and we are in a ton of independent bookstores. They also totally understand Amazon and how all that works. So as far as putting together that page on Amazon and the description. And we worked really well with them. I mean, they were great as far as, this is our idea of, what we should have on the Amazon page. And then we totally redid it, and they were 100% fine with that. And they did all the graphics, and, they know how to advertise on Amazon. And, all those fun things where, you're looking at another pickleball book. It's like, oh, why don't you consider Pickleball for Dummies? So they know all those tricks, which I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And so that was great. But the instant distribution when the book comes out, is just huge. But we had put together a plan, and we worked it through them as far as what we were going to do. And the biggest advantage we had were 2 things. One was a newsletter. So for my I Used to Be Somebody podcast, we have a newsletter. By the way, the name of it, totally by accident, was Pickleball Media. That's the name of my company. And the only reason why we came up with that was just on a whim that I like pickleball. That was strictly it. And I actually got the deal from Wiley because of the podcast. Someone who was a listener who used to work at Wiley listened to it, and she also likes pickleball, and she looked up the fact that Wiley, and you have to understand books, the Dummy series, that they have over 3,000 titles, and they didn't have Pickleball, and Pickleball is so hot now. If you're, in the media, or at this point, if you're on the, in the world somewhere, you've actually heard about Pickleball. And so we got the deal because of that, and the connection from the podcast. So anyway, that was just sort of a lucky thing that happened, but it worked out quite well.
That's pretty amazing. Connections are everything. I'm going to ask you another question about your marketing plan in a minute, but I want to ask a follow-up question about your distribution. So you said that Wiley can instantly distribute your books, but doesn't there have to be a demand for it, or do they push the book into the stores? Or with 3,000 titles, Barnes & Noble does not have 3,000 Dummies titles in there. Yes. How do they make the decision on what to carry or what to push?
Yeah, so they have a whole sales team, and actually they let us talk to the whole the key salespeople there, and really got them fired up. And I actually put together a list of pickleball articles that were in all the major media outlets, New York Times and USA Today and the Washington Post, and literally every one of them has had a pickleball article in the past 2 or 3 months when we were looking into it. I put that together, a Google sheet, and you couldn't believe it. I mean, literally the New York Times has a pickleball article almost every week. Especially now that everything's online, there's so much segmentation and niches. And so I was able to prove to Wiley that this is worth investing some money, and also prove it to the salespeople where they really were able to push it. And they did a really good job of going in the stores. We haven't cracked quite Costco. And the thing is, which is really, really hard to do, but I have a feeling this spring we may actually do it, because if you think of who the Costco buyer is, and you think about pickleball, and anyway, if we do that, they'll be incredible. But we're, like I said, we're in every Barnes and Noble and a ton of independent bookstores, and as you know, Amazon is sort of the king right now, for good or bad or whatever. And it's done really well.
Fantastic. Congratulations. What can an author expect a publisher to do in terms of marketing the book beyond the distribution?
They do actually a pretty good job within the industry. So, the industry book magazines and periodicals, they actually ran some ads in it. They also do a pretty good job on Instagram and Facebook as far as putting ads together, which actually were really helpful. And, I alluded to earlier, though, I think any author needs to put together a newsletter. And that's the only way to really sort of develop your own customers. And we have right now 2,600 subscribers to our newsletter. And the open rate is like 65%. And these people listen to the podcast, every month, and they're like really loyal customers. And because people sort of fall in love with podcasts, and it's worked out well. And the other thing is, our partner Rianne Steele, she developed a Playtime Scheduler. So if you're in the pickleball world, and if you're trying to figure out where do you play pickleball, you go on playtimescheduler.com, and it will tell you in your neighborhood or in your city, or if you're traveling, where are the courts, when are open play. And it's amazing. And she has 120,000 subscribers to this. So
that's a list.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, you have to be careful not to overdo, going to that same list over and over. She's only done it twice, but pretty much it's guaranteed we're going to sell at least 1,000 books every time she does it. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And so that's that's the whole idea. If, getting together as far as like uh, any sort of email list. And to me, I really believe emails are so much more valuable than social media. Like everyone's going to go on Facebook and Instagram and all that. And, I'll take an email over someone hitting a like every time. And emails are just so valuable. And we've sold a ton of books because of that.
Fantastic. What other activities, marketing activities have you done to promote the book?
So we've done a whole bunch of things. So what I did was I developed a list of contacts, either editors or whoever the contact is, and I broke it down by like eight groups, and it was top media outlets. So those are New York Times and all those sort of publications, pickleball blogs, pickleball sponsors, online pickleball related contacts, pickleball websites, pickleball industry influencers, active adult communities, and city and regional publishers. So those are 8 different lists. And I developed an email, different one, personalized email to each one in those lists. And we've been able to generate a ton of publicity from those lists. And that's really worked well. We developed our own press release, and we worked with Wiley on all that. And that really works out quite well. And the thing is, what I want to tell authors, because on my podcast, I interview a lot of authors, and people get really excited, the first 2 or 3 weeks, as far as really pushing the book, marketing the book, and then they sort of forget about it. And if you want to sell a lot of books, you have to keep a constant marketing campaign. And right now, like our book came out in October, we had 4 really solid months, and it's great because they came out, for the holidays, which is obviously a big time. But in the pickleball world, spring and summer is where it's at. So now we're going to have a whole bunch of articles coming out in particularly city and regionals, magazines and online publications about pickleball. And, and they'll reference the Pickleball for Dummies book. And the other thing that you'll learn, though, some of these publications and sites, they don't have big staffs. So we've actually written 4 or 5 sort of generic pickleball articles where we'll just sort of, we'll write it for them. Very quickly, we can convert it to whoever their audience is. And they love it. So they get an article and they run, a cover of Pickleball for Dummies and give us credit at the bottom and a link to the book. And it really works out. So you try to make it as easy as possible for any sort of media outlet.
Fantastic. Those are great ideas. I'm just curious, how many hours a week do you spend marketing your book?
I would say probably about 10. I would say on average about 10 hours. I'll tell you another great place, and people would never even think about it, but LinkedIn. I've sold a ton of books because of contacts and posts that I do on LinkedIn. And it's I have 8,000 connections on LinkedIn. And so when I do a post, I get a pretty good response to it. And you would never think in a million years, I mean, because LinkedIn is, a business social media, and there are a ton of people playing pickleball on LinkedIn. And there's hardly anyone else marketing any sort of pickleball thing on LinkedIn. So sometimes you have to look for like markets that would maybe don't make that much sense, but you can totally dominate them. And that's really worked out quite well for us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. How can people learn more about your services and your book?
Well, obviously, you can go to Amazon, Pickleball for Dummies, and we've consistently been 1 or 2 selling book on Amazon in the pickleball. Well, there's no pickleball category, but there is one for rackets. So we're beating up on most of those tennis books pretty well. Anyway, and then also if you Google Pickleball Media, our site will come up, and there's information about the book in there and also about the podcast, I Used to Be Somebody.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks everyone for listening. We have more than 175 other videos on YouTube on how to write your book in a flash. And this is one of our few podcasts in a series on how to market your books. So thank you for giving us some fresh insights on a very important topic, Carl. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Dan.